All right, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. I know that I haven't been around in a while, but I am back. It is December 4th in Kitsap County. It is a paltry 37, 38 degrees. It is quite chilly outside. So it is time to bundle up. As you can see, I've got my sweater on, which I love wintertime, but I don't love it for the reason that we're having this show here today. And the reason why we're having our show here today is about the severe weather shelters, right? And so they open up November 1st, and this is that time. And, when the weather dips down to 32 degrees, but we'll get all into the details because I've got a guest for me. You don't have to hear the little quick commercial that I come up and say, hey, the shelters are open today. I actually have someone with me today. Um, I want to introduce everyone to Amy Roszak. Roszak?
Roszak.
Roszak. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Amy.
Thank you for having me,
All
of
right.
course.
So, Amy is the volunteer coordinator for Kitsap County Severe Weather Shelter in Silverdale. And you have been coordinating the shelters for how long?
I don't actually know. So I think it's about 5 years,
Wow.
but it might it's plus or minus one or two.
So, what made you want to get into,
uh,
managing the severe weather shelters?
it wasn't that I got into managing it. Plus, we actually have a manager, so I'm the volunteer coordinator.
Ah, got you. Okay.
But there are two of us sort of in charge of it, so I guess it's management, even though I'm not manager. So I didn't. I volunteered to be the point in time. Do you know?
Hmm.
And do they know?
Yeah, well, the point in time count is a count that is done once a year in
Hmm.
Kitsap County to count the unhoused. And what's really important about that is that's how they determine the funding that comes into
Correct.
the county,
Correct.
which is unfortunate because those counts are historically
Very
lower.
low. Right. Because I mean, just think about it. How are you going to find people that are unhoused? And it also depends on what they define unhoused.
Hmm.
And this is all government definitions. So somebody who's staying on a couch of somebody else is technically not unhoused, even though they really are.
Right.
So there's different, you know, people that are counted, um, but that's what it is, and it's actually done all over the country. So
Mm.
it comes also from the federal government, and so everybody does this. And in fact, Seattle last year or 2 years ago came up with a new way of counting it. It was a prototype, and they're still working out whether it's going to be okay.
Are you feeling optimistic about it?
Oh, I have no idea.
Ah.
But anyway, I was doing the point in time count that year, volunteered, and they asked me if I would go to the Silverdale shelter because we're trying to find people where they are. And so on a particular morning, we volunteers get up and go out into the woods and actually try and find unhoused tents or encampments or whatever. But they also have volunteers going to the food banks and the meal sites. And the Silverdale shelter was open. Well, some of the shelters might have been open that night, and so I was sent to the Silverdale shelter. And there's a an interview process, and so I did that. And you ask people like where they were last had a house, and where they came from, where they're living now, how many, whatever their age, and I actually found it pretty fascinating.
Wow.
And the people that I was talking to, like, it was just a really interesting conversation because I never did that before and I have not been unhoused. And so then after I did that, I thought I could volunteer for this. So I started being just a volunteer and doing the shifts. And then when the person who was doing the scheduling uh, decided to step back, then I took over and have made it my own, and I love it. I really do.
So, one of the things that we really want to get into today is volunteerism and recruiting volunteers for the severe weather
Hmm.
shelter.
Yeah.
So, let's jump into that a little bit. What is it? What do people have to do? What's a day in the life of a volunteer? Tell us all about it.
So mostly what they have to do is want to be there and realize that we want our guests to be there. And so we're trying to make an environment where they feel most comfortable, safe, secure, and that they want to make the effort to come from their tent or where they're living there, which isn't that easy because they have stuff and they have to leave it for the night or whenever it is. And they also are coming into an area that is enclosed and with other people. And so there are things that may not be, and they may have pets. There are reasons why people might not want to come to the shelter. We want to be there. So our volunteers, um, the shelter is strictly run by volunteers. We are a county shelter, and there are now three. But so our rules mostly come from the county. Our insurance comes from the county, but the actual running of the shelter is all volunteer.
So I've put the application or the kind of the process up there. If someone wants to get started, right? They complete and sign the application to become a registered volunteer. Uh, and it
And
says,
they have to send in that application. It is extremely important that you send your headshot photo. It could be just with
"Oh,
a cell
really?
phone. It says to send a photo, but the county doesn't process your application until that photo is received
Oh, wow. Okay,
because it costs them and they want to make sure they have everything that they need before they do the background check. So this is all done by the county. And then I get a list of names. And then we train. So you don't have to know anything. You don't even have to know if this is for you. Just come and if you have an interest, you come and you try it. And if it's not for you, then it's fine. Maybe you'll know someone else it is for, or maybe it's just, something that was a good shot, and you'll find another volunteering position somewhere else that'll make you happier. But if you do like it, what's really good about being a volunteer, aside from the fact that you're helping, I'm talking about from your own point of view, aside from
mhm,
the fact that you're helping other people, is that you don't commit to anything in advance. You don't have a certain number of shifts you have to do. You don't have to have certain days. It's just the call comes from the county to me and it says we're going to open tonight.
and you're the person who answers the phone.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. Or Maggie. She
Okay,
is the shelter manager.
got you.
So a lot of times because I'm a late sleeper, she might call me and say, we're opening. I then have to get volunteers to cover all three shifts. There are three shifts. We start at 5 in the evening. The guests come at 6, and it goes all night long. And the guests leave at 7, and by 8 we're closed up. And we have to have all shifts filled by 11 o'clock that morning in order to open that night.
Got you.
So I really rarely scramble in the morning. I try my best, even if the county hasn't called it till the morning, to get things set up when I think it's going to be happening before.
So let's pretend that tonight the we knew the weather was gonna dip and the shelter was gonna open tomorrow, and you would give me a call before 11?
So what would happen is you're the potential volunteer, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so actually I just like I do on Mondays and Thursdays, I get a email from the county in the morning at 7 or 8 o'clock to tell me that we're going to be open or not open. So I always check ahead. Like I knew today was going to be cold, but it wasn't anywhere going to be close enough to 32. So I did not even concern myself. If I
Gotcha.
see ahead of time that it's going to be somewhere in the low 30s, I probably will then. I do everything by email.
Mhm.
But we also have an option for people who don't feel comfortable with email that you can have a phone conversation with Maggie. She will call you. But I
Gotcha.
do everything with email. It says we're probably going to open, or it might say we're definitely activated.
Gotcha.
And then you click the link, you sign up. It's really easy. It says I'm available for shift one, or I'm available for shift one, two, and three. And
So what
or
would
I'm
shift 1 be?
shift one would be 5 to 10.
Okay,
Shift
so
two would be 10 to 3,
okay.
and shift three would be 3 to 8 in the morning.
Oh, okay.
And if you're concerned with driving because it's this severe weather, it could be snowy and icy, and it could be just dark and you might feel uncomfortable. We have G2G2.
What?
who
True story.
who is able to pick up volunteers and bring them to the shelter and take them back in the morning. So don't let that be a barrier for
And
you.
so what do those volunteers do? Do they, because we get the call. So do they call us themselves? Do you let them know, hey, if you need a ride, just call,
I do.
G2?
I have told everybody, and in every notice that goes out that says, please click to sign up, it says, if you need a ride, G2 will blah, 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 and it has the phone number. I don't do the call, but I do tell them, that it's available and that they make the call. And I say the earlier you do, the better. But if it happens that your car doesn't start, call them because, they'll try and get you there. Um,
Awesome.
so
And I never announced that. So, volunteers, if you need a ride to the severe weather shelter, if that's what's keeping you from coming, just call 360-373-3000. It's in the ticker, and one of our drivers will get to you and get you to the shelter and get you back home when your shift is done, whether you're doing the first shift, second shift, third shift, or all three.
Right. Well, you'll never do all 3. In
Oh,
fact, so what it
really?
is you tell me what shift. I'm a puzzle person,
Ah,
okay? So you tell me what shifts you're available for. You will never do more than 1 shift in a day, and I
oh,
try not
really?
to do it back to back because we sometimes we're open for one night and then not, but that's rare. Usually it comes in a bundle. There was 1 year we were open for 28 days in a row.
Wow.
So you think six volunteers, that can't be that hard, right? But when you're talking 3 nights in a row, then that's 18 right there.
Right.
And people have jobs, people have lives, people get sick, people go on vacation. There's all sorts of. Some people can only do the first shift because they work. Some people
Mhm.
can only do weekends. Or so even though may look like I have a lot of volunteers, there are times where we're down to 5 people and we need that sixth person in
Gotcha.
order to open. So the first shift shows up and they set up. There we have cots, we have snacks, we have hot water, we have the lights, the heat. We don't put the heat on very high because people who are unhoused tend to like it to be cool where they are because they
Mm,
will just, you know, be
just
very
sweat.
uncomfortable. Yeah,
Mhm.
we have sheets and blankets, and it's a really nice environment. Sometimes we have meals if volunteers make something, crock pot of something. Sometimes all of a sudden a pizza will be delivered from somebody else and it'll just show up. So the first shift sets up and then they welcome the guests, they sign them in. There's a process. I'm not going to go through everything because it's kind of boring, probably, unless you're a volunteer, and then you'll know it all anyway. And then by 9 o'clock, if somebody they have to be there. They have to sign in between 6 and 9. If they're not there at 9 o'clock, then they're not allowed to come in
Mm.
unless they're with an emergency worker, hospital, police, fire. We're working on getting G2 as being one of those people that
Which
can
would be
bring them in.
fantastic, yeah.
And then at 10 o'clock, it's.
So if
Mhm.
someone is unhoused and it's after 9, should they dial 911 then? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Generally, what they do is they come to the door and it makes the volunteers on shift really in a bad position because of course we want to let them in, but if you do that, there are certain rules that if you do and you break them, it makes it really hard for the shelter functioning because, well, I was let done this time, so you're a
Mhm.
bad person.
Right.
So anyway, then at 10 o'clock it's lights out. The main room we sit in is open all the time and the lights are on
Mm.
and guests can sit there as long as they'd like and talk and eat and whatever they want. There is a TV also. um and but the rest of the rooms are closed. We have 3 rooms in Silverdale, and each shelter, I should add, there are 3 shelters, and we each function similarly with the same intent, but our rules and our facilities are all very different.
And I'll put those addresses up while you talk and
So then at 10 o'clock the door's locked and the guests are not allowed to go out, so their smoke break is done for the night. They are allowed to leave, but if they leave they can't come back until the next shelter opening.
right, understood.
And then the second shift comes in, and from 10 to 3 there are generally very few people up, maybe none. Most people are there to sleep, and their job is mostly to stay awake.
Mm.
And so it's nice if you knit, if you read, if you, whatever, that this is a good shift for you if you're a night person.
Playing
Yeah.
games on your phone.
Right. Playing cards
Mm.
with the other there's always two volunteers on staff. We
Oh,
never
nice.
can have one person alone.
Okay.
And then the third shift comes in at 3. Oh, and the second shift does checks. You walk around, and during the handoff you say if there are any emergencies, or if anybody, anything came up during the time there's a handoff. um, and I'd like to say about emergencies, it doesn't really happen very often. You might could think that there are issues all the time, and it's not that it never happens, but it rarely happens. And then from 3 to the 8 o'clock shift, they're setting up for breakfast. There's a light breakfast, and we also have, I forgot, clothing in the back room that's
Oh, really?
donated. So people come in, especially if it's a snowy wet, they might ask for clean socks, jeans. Well, we try to actually just do pants that have elastic
Gotcha.
because it
Okay.
fits more people.
So they can
Um,
come in
and they
and
can
get into
ask
dry
anything
clothes
they
and go to
want,
sleep
right?
dry. Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So, from the 3 to 8, they're preparing for the morning. They wake the guests up at 7. The guests pretty much know all the rules and are really helpful and supportive to the volunteers. They really appreciate us having this most of the time. And then the guests, they're woken up, I think, at 6, and then at 7, they need to be out. And then there's an hour of cleanup. And then it's closed. And Maggie, our shelter manager, does so much behind the scenes.
Mm.
But the volunteers themselves and it's all written up step by step by step of exactly what you do for each shift. So
Yeah, up there I have the severe weather shelter.
there you
The
do.
shift, so you just gotta come
Good
in and
job.
just talking about what the setup looks like. So,
Yeah.
I've already learned so much in this conversation, right? I've been talking about the severe weather shelter for the last 3 years, and I didn't know that, folks could just do one shift, come in, do,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
5 to 8,
5 to 10.
5 to 10,
And
and you're
if they
done.
could only do 5 to 8, they
Mhm.
could answer, "I'm available from 5 to 8 if you need me." Because there are times where I'm desperate and I could get someone, or Maggie is always there.
Mm,
So, if we really need to fit it in, the great thing is also that I'm the person on the other end of this thing. It's like you answer it, but you may not realize that it's really going to me, to a person. And so they'll say, "Amy, I'd prefer not to work tonight, but
mhm.
if it's a matter of opening or not opening, put me in."
Gotcha, okay.
And the reason I ask for all the shifts you could do and all the days, because there may be a 4-day thing that I'm trying to ask about with all the shifts, is because then I get into my puzzle mode
Mm,
and I'm able to say, okay, this person can only do Wednesday second shift. I'm going to plug them in there.
mhm,
And then if you are saying, I'll do any shift any day, I'll leave you off till the end and see where I can work people. And that I can, if I want to, like, I can try and get someone to work Monday and then Wednesday or Thursday, but not Tuesday. But if I can't, I might contact them and say, "How do you feel about 2 days in a row?"
right.
But the more volunteers we have, the easier this is. And they're becoming more in tune with answering. It used to be I would put the call out and then I would have to write another email. I always follow up with a text because some people might see their phone but not
Mhm,
the email. And I would do this multiple times. And I always ask for you to tell me if you can't work. There's no record of how many times you have said I can't work. It's just literally so that I know you've seen the email, you can't work, and I don't have to waste my time trying to find who can work. Maybe Maggie and I might get on the phone and start calling people. So,
That's really good to know because I think some people are hesitant to sign up. Like, I want to sign up, but then if there's something going on, or I just can't do it, or I don't want to do it, I don't want to be guilted into feeling
yeah,
like I have
yeah,
to. So I'm just not going to
absolutely.
sign up. And it's not like that at
It's
all.
not like that at all. And it's also what you said at the beginning. If you try it and it's not for you, that's okay too.
Hmm.
It's just that you might actually like it. And you can come with a partner. And if you write on your sign up, that we want to always work together, or if you have a spouse or someone and you say we both want to work but we don't want to work together, I will do whatever it is to make the
Oh,
guests
that's
and
awesome.
get our shelter open. And so that all depends coming down to the
So
volunteers.
what is the youngest age? Because I know
Mm,
there's some young adults. I know there's kids that would love to help
yeah.
out. Is it 18? Is
I
it
actually don't absolutely know. I think
gotcha.
it's probably 18,
Okay.
but it seems like it could be earlier with a parent, but I don't know.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure that they can actually volunteer or if they can just observe or something.
Mhm.
Like I think
Like
we've
they could
had
help the
a
parent
Boy
maybe.
Scout kind of
Gotcha.
thing happening, but I bet it's 18. I thought you were going to ask the age of our guests.
Oh, no.
And so we do have families.
Mhm.
We had one on this cyclone, this bomb
Oh,
cyclone
right,
wind
right.
thing. We didn't actually. The Port Orchard site had a family of five. Um, I have been there several times with young adults, like in their late teens to
Mhm.
early 20s. And but mostly I would say it's the middle age. We have both men and women. We have more men. Um,
So middle age, like 30s, 40s,
30s
50s.
30s to 60s.
Wow.
We've had as old in the 70s and 80s. We had a
Mm.
man come in. He used to come in from the hospital a lot with a huge bag of medication.
Wow.
We tend to, I mean, many years we tend to know our guests well. They come every year and every time. It seems like lately we've been getting many, many more guests that we don't know. And even to the end of the season, generally we would get our new guests in the beginning of the season and then we would get to know them. But which makes me actually kind of sad. I mean, I don't know exactly what's happening, but we're getting people who are unhoused right straight through the end of the season, which is the end of March, which
Mm.
is odd.
Yeah. So, it's super easy to volunteer, but it looks like there's a lot of different things maybe folks can do. Shout out to Jocelyn and the prayer walkers. They'll do their casseroles on
Yeah.
Sunday. And so you said sometimes folks bring in food if they wanted to donate food for those
Um,
folks, but didn't want to physically volunteer. Could they
yeah.
do that?
I suppose I'm sure they could. Um, we did have somebody recently contact me who said, I can't volunteer, but I have a restaurant and I
Mhm.
would like to be able to bring it over. It's a little bit tricky for them because we're not open on a regular basis.
Right.
And um, that notice goes out. And that's the reason this is what I'm asked also is why we have to be closed by 11 o'clock in the morning, let the county know. And it's because a lot of partner agencies goes on outside of us and they have to know the buses run the banners on the police and the fire and the hospital uh, and G2G2 and I'm not actually sure all what goes on but there's a process that goes on and so
A lot of folks have to be informed.
yeah and so if you were going to be bringing you'd have to like watch out and it may be an immediate kind of thing like you need to if you wanted to do it for that night
Mhm.
um clothing we generally are pretty specific on the kind of clothing that we need and like I said sweatpant type things
Mhm.
are pretty popular um we take sleeping bags and
Oh,
tents
nice.
backpacks um most of the
Jackets,
snacks,
probably.
jackets,
Scarves,
coats,
gloves.
and socks and
Mhm.
hats and all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Um, we also just take warm clothes, just things that people, because the other thing is that people tend to go through clothing because they may not have access to laundry, things get wet and what they don't have dryers. So there's a lot to being
Unhoused,
unhoused
yeah.
which I think I'll mention it has nothing to do with the volunteers, but a lot of people think, why don't they just get a job and then they can get a house
Mhm.
and, you know, it's well, for one thing, if you're living unhoused, you probably don't have access to the alarm clock that wakes you up, transportation to get there, um, clothing, you have to be clean, you have to apply for a job and then hear back from them.
Mhm.
And then there are the mental health and drug issues. And um, one of the things about the drug issues or is that if you're going to be living unhoused, I can't imagine doing it for more than a night or two.
Right.
And I would imagine that drugs are a coping mechanism for being unhoused, which also then is a cycle because
Yeah, just yep.
it's hard to then get your life together when you're living on with drugs. And there's a lot of mental health issues, which then also, because you're not making it to your appointments, you don't have a regular schedule to live by, you don't
Yeah.
even know where you're going to be going to the bathroom,
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
um
And that's hard to find here in
yeah,
Kitsap.
yeah. And so then you've got the um the drugs, the illegal drugs
Mhm.
to help you through your mental illness. So it's a lot more complicated issue than sometimes people understand or,
And I think it's even
know.
more than just the stigma or what people think of as, mental health issue, uh, yeah, there's a lot of guilt centered around, if I'm homeless and my child is homeless at the same time, and I'm a bad parent and feeling that way, right? And so it's just
Yes.
those things,
Right.
you
And there's PTSD.
yeah, yeah.
There's other mental illnesses than what people just think of the person that's standing there talking to themselves, aimlessly.
Mhm.
uh, Extreme anxiety. Um, it's just a really stumbling, encompassing, and a lot of it is treated with good drugs, with regular drugs, with prescribed
Mhm.
drugs
And counseling
and
and
counseling. But you kind of
family
have
and
to be into
friends
the
and
position
support,
to be there, which is
resources.
why some of our, like, the severe weather shelter is not set up to be dealing, trying to get people in a different, we're literally there to provide a place so that they don't die that night
Yeah,
in the cold.
absolutely.
We can help refer or have information for them. I have sat in the hospital room with someone that wanted to go through detox, didn't actually get to it because after 4 hours of waiting in the emergency room,
Wow.
he left.
Mhm.
But yeah.
So people ask, what triggers the severe weather shelter to open?
Well, it's all county,
Mhm.
right? And it's mainly based on the Bremerton Airport
Oh, really?
because it tends to be the coldest place in the county.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of times they'll say, it's really cold here. Well, it may be. It may have happened that we didn't get triggered because the airport didn't. But with the bomb cyclone, it was actually focused in the north part of the county. And so all three shelters were open.
Gotcha.
And there's a range of things. It mostly, the easiest one to remember is 32 degrees.
Mhm.
But there are other conditions like snow that's on the ground, even if the air has warmed up, and it could be extreme amounts of rain, but they're all specific, like it either is or it isn't. And
Right.
once we're activated, meaning we meet the requirements, um, then we're going to open whether the weather changed or not.
So what happens, if we look at the forecast, because, during this time, G2, we have to
You do
definitely
too.
see what's happening, right? And what's coming up. But sometimes the weather throws us for a loop, right? It
Mhm.
says, hey, it's
Yeah,
not going to dip down. And
yeah,
then all of a sudden it's like 7 o'clock and it's 31
yeah,
degrees. And it's like, oh man, what's
yeah,
going on?
yeah.
So is it too late?
It,
There's just no way to,
nope.
you know, get everyone going.
No,
It's just nothing that can be
it's
done.
it's the county rules,
Hmm.
and um, it happens by 11 o'clock. Well, we have to be scheduled by 11 o'clock. But like for the bomb cyclone, we get our email at in the morning on Mondays and Thursdays. But then Tuesday, I mean Monday later in the day, they started saying that that things were changing. So we did get notified, but it was for Tuesday.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
it was that extra, not the morning thing. And so um, But there's a problem with that because if uh, if the severe weather is happening on the weekend, well, we need to be scheduled by Friday at
Oh
11.
wow.
And so because the county isn't there, right? So they have to schedule it while they're working Monday through Friday. And if we have a holiday on Friday, then we have to know by Thursday. Well, a lot could change between then, but once it's scheduled. And if it's not scheduled and we're closed, then we can't open. Yeah.
So if and when that ever happens, you definitely want to get folks to, you know, down to the Salvation Army because that shelter is always open.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And
that's
soon,
super important.
hopefully, oh no, wait, that's not going to be a drop in shelter. I was going to say the Mile High
Mm-hmm.
shelter, but that's
Which the
not going
ribbon
to,
cutting is Friday.
yeah, but that's not going to be a drop in, right?
I do not believe
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Um, so, um, I kind of hope one day that we're not going to have the shelter and that it's not going to be run by volunteers
Mm.
because it really shouldn't be that we don't have a shelter if we can't get the volunteers.
Right.
But until then, then I'm I'm employed. Maybe they'll pay me twice as much as I get, right?
Twice as much as zero.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, you know, you get good people and
It's great. And
mhm.
I can't speak for the others, but I imagine the other shelters are similar. We have a really good fun group, and people. Uh, I have started last year. This past summer, we had a barbecue, and then we had at our orientation this year we had a dinner, and just a time for people to be able to socialize
Oh,
because
nice.
normally you get to know people but you only get that shift. And
Hmm.
so I'm trying to build on the community of our
Oh,
volunteers,
that's awesome.
and we really like each other.
Mm. So
Yeah.
you get folks that are volunteering year after
Oh
year
yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
more folks are coming.
Yeah. And in fact, some volunteers have been from the beginning. I have not was not from the beginning. I don't remember. I don't even know when this started. It was a few years before I started. And we have some volunteers that are from the beginning. And we have people that come and go, and they may actually even move and come back.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And our new volunteers are so important because they tend to be the most, I don't know, excited. I mean, they're wanting to. Like, we have only had one opening so far, and people are contacting me saying, I haven't, been called. Um, and I don't want anyone to feel afraid because I would never assign them to a shift without feeling comfortable.
Gotcha.
And so we always assign with a experienced volunteer. This year, I've been able because on our one day, because we had a lot of people sign up for that. I put two real volunteers scheduled and then a new volunteer as a observer, helper, whatever. And I think that's a really good thing. But you would never be feeling like I don't know what I'm doing,
Hmm.
and they're expecting me to just step in. It's not like
Is there coffee?
that. For the
Some
volunteers
of us might be, you
or
know,
the
tempted
guests.
by the lure of coffee.
We have hot water going all the time. We have coffee pot. We have cup of soup and snacks bars, granola bars, and we usually have peanut butter and those snacks and things. We often have desserts. Um, we might get things from like the Safeway bakery that they can't sell,
Oh, wow.
and of course, uh, volunteers. I mean, they're our treasures. So of course, you're welcome to whatever. And same thing. I wanted to say that the shelter is not mine and it's not Maggie's.
Hmm.
It's everybody. So when you're working there, like feel free to get up and look in the cupboards and organize the shelves and that kind of thing. So yeah, we volunteers are where it's at. So you
How
know,
many people typically stay in the shelter when it does open?
so that varies from shelter to shelter.
Hmm.
We are often the most used. Port Orchard and Silverdale tend to be, well, obviously this year's only three, but are the most used. and we tend to be our numbers tend to be a little bit higher.
Okay.
Um, but I don't think that's always the case.
Like more than 20?
And so I would say our average nights, and not average in the mathematical, but our typical nights are maybe between 7 and 12 or 13. We probably have had, I think the most has been 23.
Okay.
We sometimes on our first night or second night of the season may only get one or two. This year we got five. Um, seven. We got seven on our first night. Um, it varies with sometimes the severity um, of the event. Like if it's a multi-day event, we probably will get more and more and more because the word gets out.
Gotcha. Okay.
So sometimes just with one night, it's not worth somebody just bundling up and coming down.
Hmm.
But if it's going to be pretty intense, then they might do that. And we have taken bicycles and shopping carts and things. We store all their belongings in another room. They don't have access to their belongings while they're there, other than their cigarettes, their phone, a book, things like that. But
Gotcha.
otherwise, we take their belongings and store it in a safe place. And that helps them feel safe that nobody's going to be into their stuff. It also helps volunteers feel safe because they don't have who knows what in their
Hmm.
possession.
And it makes the shelter more accessible for those folks that are traveling light. But one of the challenges to
Yeah.
get folks to come indoors is sometimes they do have a lot of belongings,
Yeah.
and if they come in for the night and they go back, those belongings are gone, and
Yeah.
that's everything they own.
Right. And so we can't, I don't know what could be done about that. We do have, like I said, one or two bring a bicycle, maybe even a trailer.
Hmm.
Um, but most people come in with pretty much just a backpack, maybe a big backpack, but just a backpack. Some people come in with nothing
Yeah.
but what they're wearing.
So I wanted to ask the question on how many people are going to be there because I'm going to commit to making my spaghetti this
Ah,
year.
okay,
So
okay. All right.
I'll be dropping that off.
Okay,
Actually, one of
okay.
the drivers will be dropping it off. So should I bring utensils and plates and all that,
No,
or
we've got all
just
of
send the nice hot spaghetti there?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Just a
All right.
crock pot and we'll wash it and you can pick it up. Um,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
next
I just get
whenever.
back to the
Yeah,
driver
yeah.
and
And yeah, and you can always actually contact me because I will know.
hmm.
Um, no, I won't. I won't know the guests. I mean, we know we have six volunteers. But besides that, I would say probably preparing for 15 is a good
It's
guess.
good. Okay. Oh, so for those that are staying and then those that are volunteering and helping
Yeah,
out, so about
yeah.
15. Oh yeah,
Well,
easy.
most people don't eat after the first shift,
Okay.
I would say. But I would say that 15 would cover the guests, and obviously two volunteers, but or 12. But
Good.
yeah.
All right. So that makes me feel good, like I can help
Do something.
participate even if I
Right.
can't come and
Right.
physically volunteer, which
Right.
is great. So I want to
Yeah.
give the information for people to volunteer if they want. One, let me first show you the website if you want to get more information. It's there on your screen there. And then the three shelters that are open this year is the Port Orchard United Methodist Church, and that is on 725 Kitsap Street, Port Orchard. From Bay Street, you can turn south onto Sydney Ave toward the courthouse, located on the corner of Kitsap Street and Sydney Avenue. Now, check-in is between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. But like Amy was saying, if it's after that time, they just need to dial 911 and then they can get in that way.
And Maron, we're trying though that they know. Like
Mhm.
I'm often say, why don't you set an alarm on your phone that
Mm.
says it's 8:30 and I need to be at the shelter?
Mhm, mhm.
So it's always okay to come with emergency vehicles, but really we try and get them there and settled in earlier. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
And give us a call. So if G2 is bringing that person to the shelter and we arrive at 9:05, that's fine,
Mm,
right? I mean, we're
mhm,
going to
mhm,
drive safely. We have
mhm, mhm.
multiple people
No,
to
that's
pick
fine.
up, so
No,
that's all
no.
good. Village Green Community Center. That is at 26159 Delay Road, Northeast in Kingston. 98345 from Northeast State Highway 104. Turn south onto Ludwig Road Northeast. Turn left onto Northeast Kingston Road or West Kingston Road, and then turn left onto Delay Road. Again, their check-in is from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then Silverdale, where Amy is, check-in is at 6 to 9 p.m. 9982 Silverdale Way in Silverdale, located kitty corner from the south end of the Kitsap Mall.
And there's some important we maybe you have it already. There's important ways to be notified.
Ah, yes. So one thing is, and I always tell folks, you can sign up for SMS notification
Mm.
for this anytime that the shelter is activated by texting Kitsap SWS, which is Severe Weather Shelter, to 898211. And then I'll pull the phone numbers up here. I believe is this right? Contact. Oh, this is the crisis line, which is always good to put up there. If you need help, 24/7, 365 days of the year, to get help or for you or someone else, right? If you don't know what to do and there's someone that's in crisis and you want some resources or advice, call 1-888 910 or go to imhurting.org for a 24/7 chat line and other help for you and your friends and family. And then let me go ahead and pull up those numbers. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's the main thing. There's also an email thing that you can get. I get something from the Department of Emergency Management as a regular person, not as a shelter thing.
Oh, really?
So there is an email, and I bet it's on
On
that
that,
page
let me
that's
pull that
just
up there.
which doesn't have a great URL to share, but if you forget, all you have to do, because I use it all the time, is Google Kitsap Severe Weather Shelter. And then it brings you to that page that has everything how to volunteer, when we're open. It has a thing that says we're open tonight,
Hmm.
how to sign up for the text, how to sign up for the email. Um, and I have a Facebook group
Oh,
called
really?
Gimme Shelter.
Give me shelter. Oh,
Yeah.
let me put that in there. Let me add
And
that.
uh, and I tend it's a I say it's a group for sharing and caring about the unhoused in Kitsap County, and you can post things that are relevant to that, where people can take showers, where they have laundry things,
Really?
if there are special dinners or anything that the community wants to do. I put them. I try not to have people posting personal things about that they need help, and I try to make it more community wide, kind of inclusive information type stuff. And then I always post there, pretty much always post there, when the shelters are open. We get this notification actually that's on the screen. Um, and then there's also a flyer. And the flyer is what I try to post. And then also people can share on their own Facebook pages or print it and put it on a bulletin board, and that flyer comes from the county.
I might have put everything in here
Every
but that flyer.
well,
Let me
I
put it.
don't know that I sent it.
Oh, you probably did. Let me see if it's in here.
I don't know. It's if you go to that link at the bottom of that, the actual link. Can you go live?
Hmm.
Okay, if you go to the Kitsap County page. um I think they'll have the flyer, and that's a way also people can help share the information that shelters are open tonight. W- some people might wonder why we're not talking about the Salvation Army shelter.
Oh, well, tell them.
So they are a huge resource in Kitsap County in Bremerton. And you'll notice we don't have a severe weather shelter that we talk about in Bremerton. That's actually hopefully in the works with the county. I've heard it, and it takes time. So But anyway, we're the ones that we're talking about. The three are the county ones that get county funds, or we get insurance. We're covered by the county insurance, and we follow the county rules. And for example, we're located at two of the locations for the shelters. Two of the three. That's the flyer down right there. Except that looks like the Spanish one, but I don't know. See the one on the lower right?
Hmm.
Um,
It's coming
yeah, it
into view
is.
there.
So it looks slightly different, but it looks like that, and it's got a different picture. That's interesting that they have that one and not the English one. But anyway, we're located at a church, as is the one in Port Orchard. We're not affiliated with the church. They are incredibly generous to give us the space, the
Nice.
electricity, a lot of other things go along with it. And the church members, put up with a lot. And so we really appreciate that. But we are a county facility, and we are all volunteers that are approved by the county with background checks. So
And that's the Washington State Patrol background check.
I think so.
Yep.
I would imagine so. Um, there, download the severe weather shelter information flyer. Maybe it's that.
Ah, there
Can
we
you
go.
see it under flyers?
Yep.
It might be that. Of course, I don't know. There are sometimes things on the website that may not be up to date, but anyway, um, yeah, that one. Mm, is that what came up? So that's not really the flyer. But I guess it is. I guess it is. To me, that's it comes in my email. Um, but anyway, um, flyer's not important. But I do share it, and it would be great for people also to then just share it on Facebook. I put it in often the like North Kitsap community group because I'm in that. So,
That's awesome.
and then what if people have questions?
Well, if people have questions, they can always send questions here at the conduit.
Good. And
But
you will forward it on
I always
to
do,
me, right?
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then just FYI, as part of this continuum of care, I am in meetings, or someone from G2 is in meetings with the severe weather shelter team. So I will take your questions there. Usually, I won't wait that long. I'll just forward them on to Amy to get
Yeah.
answers. But yeah, if they come in that way, but then they also can reach out directly to you. And I think I have that up there, right? And if they're looking at the volunteer, uh, they
Yes.
would get you through that information also, right?
How to volunteer. No, there's an actual, did you have the big flyer that I made that's kind of dark blue and it has a picture of a little house?
Oh yeah, I do.
Um,
Let me note that
so
one.
I have an email, and there's a phone number, and I told Marwan at the beginning that it's actually rings to my number or to Maggie's number. I get a text voicemail of it, and my email is actually not my email. I set it up at Gmail email, and so I don't want to say it wrong. Um,
Let me just find it here really
eh,
quick.
there it is
It's
on the
this one.
left. Yep. Hmm.
All right, we pull that over here.
Thank you, audience, for your patience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got to do it live, right?
Yeah.
And even with my glasses on, this is across the room, so they're used to me.
Good.
All
It's a
right.
great thing that you do.
Oh, thank you.
This community.
Well, it's been one of the issues from my experience of just growing up and experiencing things and not hearing about resources or hearing about them way after the facts. Like, man, well, if I would have known, I could have taken advantage of that.
Yeah.
So, whatever we can do to, try to share information out, which would be, fantastic. We want people to use the resources,
Yeah.
especially ones that are vital, right? This is
Yeah.
this is life saving
Yeah. And
stuff
that's
here.
kind of what I say, is that I actually feel badly about this shelter, about the fact that we're really not changing lives.
Hmm.
And but at the same time, you can't change lives of somebody who's dead.
Right. Yeah.
So we are an emergency severe weather shelter, and that yeah, that's important. So anyway, have questions. You can contact SW Shelter, Severe Weather Shelter Silverdale at gmail.com. And there's a phone number. I'm pretty much always at my computer or have access to my email.
And for those that are just listening, I'll read that number to you. That's 218-585-9101. Again, that's 218-585-9101.
And if you forget all of that, you could just go to that county site and click. And I know that Michelle will probably be the one that gets your email. And you just say, I want to know information. I want to be able to contact the Silverdale shelter, whatever it is. Or if it's Port Orchard or Kingston, I'm not trying to say don't go there. If you live there, I'm sure they could use you just as well. We used to have one at Paulsbo until this year. It just wasn't well used,
Staff,
staffed, or I don't think that they had the guests. And it's odd because I know that Paulsbo has,
unhoused.
yeah,
Well, maybe with the, shelter opening up there,
mm,
that will address the issues in that area. So,
yeah. I'm kind of also hopeful that with G2G2, if there's people in Paulsbo that need a shelter for the night, they could certainly get a ride from where they are to your closest
absolutely. Yep.
shelter, whether it's Kingston or
If we
Silverdale.
picked you up from Bainbridge and there was no shelter and you needed
There,
to come all the way to, Paulsbo
yeah,
or
or
Silverdale, yep,
Silverdale.
that's
Yeah,
what we do. I
yeah.
think we were picking up volunteers, I think, during the ice storm and bringing I think there was someone on the island that we brought in.
We they did have we had one volunteer not from Bainbridge, but one time when I just couldn't get volunteers and I contacted the county, they put an all call out to their all Department of Emergency Management volunteers. And so I did have someone from Bainbridge come and volunteer, but they were not a shelter, specifically shelter. But that's how important it is. And
Yeah.
people say, well, but I think I can't do it more than a couple times. And again, we talked about that. um, it could be that one time
Mhm.
that we wouldn't have had a staff. And although I'll put a, I don't know, shout out is the wrong word, but to Maggie, because, and some of the volunteers who say, it doesn't matter if I have to be there every day in a row. And that's Maggie, that she will be there at third shift. She will be there then at first shift,
Wow.
because she is that committed to making sure that it opens.
Well, not only shout out to Maggie, but shout out to you and to all the volunteers of the Severe Weather Shelter and the county. And, there's Virginia and Doug Washburn. And I know Doug's wife, makes food for the shelter. And there's too many people that I'm going to leave off, but there's so many hands, right? Many hands make like work. And it's so
It's really
critical and
true.
important. And I know y'all feel it. You can see your breath. It's been getting down to 36,
It's
34,
it's coming.
35.
I saw something. I'm not reading the paper much, and I'm trying to stay away from the news.
That's a whole nother
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, yeah, for
We'll
my
talk
own
after.
mental health. But I did see something about an extreme weather, cold weather snap coming.
Coming. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we get alerts that it's like what, dense fog.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
get those alerts,
we don't open, yes, we don't open in dense fog.
right?
Um, but we do. And then I get something from my Echo, my Alexa.
Oh, really? Oh, don't say her in here.
Oh,
She's
oh
she
yeah,
is she who shall not be named.
yeah. So I get that all the time with that little yellow
Mhm,
notification telling
mhm.
me that there's a severe weather in Silverdale.
Some kind of event coming
Yeah,
up. Yep.
yeah. So
Well, I really appreciate you coming and hanging
thank you,
out with us.
Marwan.
And I think it's better to hear it from the experts, than
But
from me.
experts, but thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, typically, again, when the severe weather shelter opens up, I will broadcast out live. You'll see it on the Kitsap Transit buses. If you're getting the text alerts, you'll see it there. For those of you that are working with organizations, please make sure you get that information out to your staff. If you see someone that is on the side of the road or somewhere, you can let them know. They can call 211 or they can call 360-373-3000.
Or they can
Uh,
even call 911,
or
which
they
I
can
know
even call 911.
is
Yeah.
a an issue for some people, but they will not ask questions are one more thing
Yeah.
is, and maybe this is more for volunteers, but the police do know when we're open, and if there is any kind of emergency, they are there within minutes.
Yep.
And I have had one person who was ready for detox, and I called them, and they came and put on a jacket over their,
Oh, nice.
and so that she would feel less intimidated by
And it wasn't
having a
law
ride.
enforcement. It was,
Mhm.
I'm getting help.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so they gave her a ride to the hospital.
Awesome.
So
Awesome. And law enforcement can call us, right? So it's not a problem. And they can do their other things.
I
So,
also have one last one.
yeah.
I keep saying one last one. Um, I don't know if there's anyone out there that works for the police department, the sheriff, I should say, for us in Silverdale, or the fire department, but you are welcome and encouraged if you are out on one of these nights, and you should have gotten a notification that we are open. We also have sandwich signs out on the sidewalk that says that we're open. And at Silverdale, we have that big church board, and they always post up there that we're open. But if you see somebody, you are able, forget about that 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock closure. You can bring them in at 1 in the morning or whenever you happen to see them.
If they do,
So
can they get a plate of spaghetti when they bring
they
the person
certainly
in?
can. They
All
certainly
right,
can.
come get some hot food, first
Yeah.
responders. We appreciate
Yeah.
all your work during this time and all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Severe weather shelters are open November 1 and then they close March 31. So we're just getting started. All right. With that, I think that was a great show. We kept it under an hour.
Ah, thank
Again, I
you. Thank
appreciate you
you. Yeah,
coming and
it was great.
um, please, please, please send your questions, send your comments. I will get those to Amy, but you have the direct line if you want to reach out. But we'll make sure that that happens. The shelters work with your help, and we appreciate you. So for Amy, tell me your last name.
Roszak.
Roszak, like Rose.
Yeah,
That's how I
Rose.
remember it.
Okay, or Prozac.
Oh, Prozac. I am Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit.